All right, so now we're going to get into some fun stuff with example 6 in this lesson. So let's see what example 6 says. It says, given the graph of cosx, sketch y equals 1 over f of x. Well, actually, before we do that, I want to just remember what graphing a reciprocal looks like. So let's think of just some random polynomial. So I'm going to go with 0.3x cubed minus 5x squared plus 2x minus 1. And this is not nearly as fun as I wanted it to be. So when it was just that with the 5x, that's a lot more fun. I'm going to make it slightly decreased. All right. So here's my graph. I'm going to call that f of x. And then if we think about graphing y equals 1 divided by f of x, well, we get this crazy graph. And so let's think about what's happening here. I'm creating a new function by taking all of these y values and doing 1 divided by those y values. So here, the y value is 0. That's why I get my vertical asymptote. Over here, my y value is 0, so another vertical asymptote, another 0, another vertical asymptote. But also notice, as I tend to infinity, 1 divided by infinity tends to 0. This is going to positive infinity, so I'm above the x-axis. Here, I had a minimum, which then became my maximum. So let's see. That was 1.826, 1.826. Sure enough, I'm going to say that 1 divided by negative 3.6, let's see what that was, 3.651. And we get negative 2.73. And sure enough, those values match. So any minimums become maximums, any maximums become minimums. So now, based on that, I would like you to pause your video and try to create this sketch on your own. What do you think it's going to look like? All right, hopefully you're back from having paused, and I hope the first thing you did was came in and drew in a bunch of asymptotes. So anywhere that cosine crosses the x-axis, I'm going to put in an asymptote because I can't divide by 0. And then anywhere I have a maximum, I'm going to say that becomes a minimum. But I know also that these maximum values are 1. So 1 divided by 1 is still 1. 1 divided by negative 1, still there. Now think about all of these values. These values are positive values that are between 0 and 1. So they're decimals. And if I do 1 divided by a decimal, it gets bigger and bigger. So as I get closer to 0, 1 over that gets closer to positive infinity. The same thing's going to happen on this side. But now in this region, all my values are negative. As I get closer to 0, I'm getting closer to negative infinity. And that's just going to continue to happen because we know that this graph is periodic. So we'll have that. So now let's come back to Desmos and see if we were right. So I'm just going to change my f of x to be cosine of x. And sure enough, I've got my graph with all of its different asymptotes. So this graph, 1 over cosine, remember we have a name for that. We called 1 over cosine the secant function. So that's the graph of a secant. So I would like you to stop and think about what the graph of cosecant and cotangent look like following this same method and check your answers in Desmos.